Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and this time we are talking about our top 10 games of the first half of 2023. So, we always do these at the end of the year to talk about last year, but we always find that we forget about the games from the beginning of the year because we move on to all those new games that come out at Essen, and those take over everyone's brain. So, we thought, you know what, let's preempt that. Let's talk about that stuff we're excited about at the beginning of the year while we're still excited about it.
And there are a few caveats because some of these technically are a 2022 release, but weren't really available in English until this year. So they're going to go on our list.
Yeah, we're not going to count them if they were Germany only. We're really counting it by when were they available in the UK and probably same time in the US. Actually, I think the US sometimes gets them even later than we get. It's great. It's like the opposite of how movies work. So we finally get something first, but we are really excited to talk about all of these. A couple of them were provided, but I think only two. And we'll mention those when we get to them. But let's just dive right into it.
Number 10 is Disney Animated, and this was provided to us by the publisher Funko for review. And in Disney Animated, you are cooperatively trying to put together a Disney film in time for a deadline. So you're building out a scene, you're adding characters, but in the meantime, the villains are trying to thwart you from getting it done in time. And how you're doing this is it uses this very similar system to Ark Nova or Civilization New Dawn, with the card actions getting stronger the longer they are left out. So doing that in a cooperative way, I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's cool. You gotta like get your characters out, build your background, add your paint colors, all of this different stuff, and you gotta work together because as you move those, obviously, if one of them's at 5, it's really strong. But if you move that to 1, now the other person can basically not do that because you really want to be using everything when it's at 4 or 5. So it's really cool actually to take that thing from Ark Nova and others and move that into a co-op space. And I'm not that surprised because it's Prospero Hall and we just generally really like their stuff. Horrified's one of our favorite co-op games. They're good with IPs. And so this one, it was a bit of a surprise for sure because I hadn't really heard of it. And then
Yeah.
we got it at UKG and we were really, I think, pleasantly surprised by what it offered.
Yeah, they tend to be really good at using interesting mechanics, but for family weight games. And that is our number 10.
Number 9 is Bamboo, and Bamboo is from the same designer as Bitoku, and it's kind of set in the same world. So it's Germain P. Milan, and it's if you've played Bitoku, you'll recognize the art style right away, and even some of the characters. I saw Kappa was one of the
Yeah.
characters, but this has got this really interesting kind of action selection system where you've got these little bamboo stalks and each one of them has a symbol on it and those symbols are for the 4 things you can do in the game, and that's kind of getting decorations for your home, getting money, getting food to feed your family, and having these goals for how your decorations are placed. And there's this big part of the game where you're trying to balance how your decorations are within your home, but your decisions like what bamboo do I take, because that bamboo gets different spirits depending on the color of the actions, and then you're moving up the actions to get other actions that you can use the next time, and you're also trying to balance things and fill those goals. And it's like a fairly simple space in terms of rules, but it uses your brain.
Yeah, and it does come in a small box as well. So I think that also is a little bit deceptive of thinking it's going to be a bit lighter than it is. But that decision of the color leads to the area control aspect of the temples. And that really can influence what you do and when you do it as well. So it does lead to some interesting decisions. I like that one of the families is a panda family.
Yeah, I wish there was more than, because Jess always plays purple, so she always gets the panda
Yeah.
family. I'm stuck with dumb people. I wish that there were 2 pandas. I would love to be a panda family too. But and I love that Devere size box. It's that
Yeah.
same size box as Red Cathedral, and oh boy, they put a lot into those little boxes. Luna Capital, I think, was the same size box too. I love those, that size Devere box. Those are great. So that is our number 9.
Our number 8 is Stomp the Plank, and we played this for the first time at UKGE. And we played it because it was always popular. There were always people playing, always people watching, and I got given it as a birthday gift, which I was super happy about because it's silly and it's delightful. It's a push your luck game where you have to flip cards, but the longer you can go without getting a pair means that the more disc everybody else have to add to the end of this plank, which is attached magnetically in a really cool way. And then the heavier that gets and the further their elephants walk forward, the more likely they're going to fall into the seas and lose.
Yeah, it's the dichotomy of this game is that as you push your luck, you put more discs on everyone else. But if you fail, your elephant has to take a step forward. And taking a step forward is a big deal because you can only go so far. And we've had a lot of fun. This is a game that it's not even that you just are going to play 2 or 3 times. We play this like 5 or 6 times every time we play it. Like this is the sort of thing, it's the same sort of feeling we got with Strike, where we just play Strike over and over and over and over. You just kind of get in a rhythm of playing it. This is a little bit along those lines, and that simplicity, sometimes you just want that.
And the elephants look really cute, and then the boat itself is actually the box, and the magnet system is genius. And so that is our number 8.
Our number 7 is another one that was provided by the publisher, but it is Books of Time. And we've had time to play more of Books of Time. And it's just such a clever action selection system where you're adding pages to these books and the pages have actions on them. And as you do the pages, if you take the book action, you're doing both sides of the page. And you're also doing this shared page, and you're trying to put the pages in like an order and get certain pages in certain books to do these goals and get points along the way. And it's such a clever, interesting mechanic that I think works pretty well.
Yes, I do like the choice of the 3 different books that you're working off of. So you do tend to have lots of options for what actions you want to perform, but it just is also really satisfying to have it be actual binder pages. So you do have to like snap open the binders and pop them in. And so that combination of it being functionally needed, but also just very satisfying, works really well.
Yeah, and it works well at solo as well. I was surprised at what a solid solo game this is too, but that is our number 7, Books of Time.
Our number 6 is Revive, and this is one that I think I put on this would make the top game of 2022 list if it had been available for us in 2022, because I thought I would really like it. It's by the same designers as Trails of Tucana.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a surprise
because it's a leap up.
Yeah. It is a heavy game, but you are different factions and you're able to explore a world. But what's really clever about it is the different tracks that you go out, because as you get further on the tracks, you're able to open up new abilities, and those also combine to go on your scoring track too. So I don't know, there's such a mishmash of things and mechanics that I think is put together in a really interesting way.
Yeah, I think like if you ask me what is kind of the main mechanic, I would probably say it's cards. It's like card play with the action selection, but I could see someone else saying that this is about map management, or this is about the actions on the board, or this is about I think really at the heart of it is probably the combos, and it's really lining up those cards to be able to take off the blue things, and then the blue things get you these other things. And the theme does get a bit lost in this. Yeah. I know that has definitely been a complaint. I think if it didn't tell you what the theme is, I don't know that you'd guess it, but I don't really care because it's just this combo full Euro, and I love that.
And they did try to set it up as a campaign, but it's really just slowly introducing you to bits you can put in at the start. And that is our number 6.
Our number 5 is Earth. And we had plenty of plays of this before we even purchased it, because we were playing it on BGA quite a bit right at the beginning of the year. And I know everyone was very excited about it at the start of the year. And I think people maybe have got a lot of plays in and cooled off a little. I'm not sure, but it's a solid game. And I think it fills kind of the same space as like Wingspan, as this is going to be one of those games that becomes kind of that next step after Gateway that a lot of people can get into.
Yeah.
It just has a really solid card tableau building system that fits to these shared goals. And each time as you choose one of the actions, you're kind of going along and doing all of the cards that are able to do that action. So you're trying to find these kind of combo chains of how to maximize those actions and how to maximize those actions on other people's turns, because whenever anyone does anything, you get something out of it. So if anyone does the whatever the green is, you get all of your green cards go off again, and you get a lesser version of the main green action, which is cool because I like games where I'm always involved.
Yes, I think being able to do something on everyone's turn just keeps it interesting throughout the game. And the tableau building is interesting as well because you do really have to consider what goes next to things because often some of the goals will tie in. So it just feels like you're always doing these combos, and sometimes when you can pull off a really big turn, like there can be a lot you can do in one turn. It can feel really satisfying.
And I have seen that some folks say that they've basically kind of solved this game, that they figured it out, that there's like a path towards like guaranteed winning. I don't know that that's true. I've even tried what they suggested. I couldn't make it work. Jess is just a lot better at this one than me, but I haven't found that that happens yet. So it might be the case. It might not be the case. But I think for most people, for the vast majority of people who aren't just going to die hard min-max it, and you could argue the same thing for the first versions of Wingspan as well. And I think an awful lot of people are still having a lot of fun with that game, even if they weren't doing the egg
Optimal.
Yeah, the optimal egg strategy, which I don't think works anymore. So it still is a really fun game and a lot to explore, I think. And it is our number 5.
Number 4 is Village Big Box. And I know Village is an older game, but the big box version did come out this year. And it does have all of the expansions included, plus some new stuff. So I think it is fair to be a 2023 game. And we've played this probably a dozen times. It is very interesting. You have the different resources that go out, and you are going through your generations of people to be able to collect those resources and perform those actions, which also cost them time. And any time it goes past the hourglass, somebody has to die. So you're trying to maximize your different generations so that they end up being famous in the village.
And we talked about this one quite a bit, if we should include it or not. And I had this at number 2, I think, because this whole list is us both doing separate lists and then smushing our lists together. And they're fairly similar. I think these top ones I had a very different number 1 than Jess had, and we'll talk about that when we get to them. But this is just such a tremendous game, and we played it so much this year. It just felt like we had to include it on this list because if this was a brand new game, this will probably be my number 1.
Yes.
I really like this. It's only at 4 because it's a re-implementation, and it's just such a genius game. Inka and Marcus Brand do such great games. I really like the style that they've got. They've also did Rajas of the Ganges, and they did the terrific Orleans expansion that makes it into a co-op game. So they're so good at these Euro mechanics, and for my money, this is their best game.
Yes, and it would be higher, but because it's a re-implementation, it ended up as our number 4.
At number 3, we have Tribes of the Wind, and we've had kind of an interesting journey with Tribes of the Wind because I think the sweet spot for us is to play this as a 2-person game, and there's kind of a 2-player variant. So what the game is you've got this world that's a little bit like Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, if you're familiar with that, where you're building out villages, and it's like this very nice kind of arboreally themed post-apocalypse. It's like the prettiest post-apocalypse ever. So you're building out this village, and then you've got these Wind Rider people. You're moving into your village, and you're putting up houses and all this stuff. But how you mostly do that is you play cards. And to play your cards, you've got these little rules on the cards that are like, you can play this if everyone has 6 of these, or if you have the most of these compared to other people. So you see the backs of their cards, a bit like kind of Hanabi. So when you play 2 players, the deck becomes the other player's hand of cards, which is great because now it's this whole other level of thinking about, I want there to be like 3 yellows in this row in the deck. So I don't necessarily want to take a yellow because I want to play this, and then I hope Jess doesn't take a yellow. Whereas when you play with more players, you don't have that little extra level of control. So actually, I think this is great at 2.
Yeah, it does work at more. It just takes longer, and it takes away that little extra element, as you were saying, because that there is factoring what card you're removing if you want to have more than the bot, which is not the bot, but the row of cards, which is your neighbor. And one of the things that was, I think, surprising for us is how much of a race game this really is.
Oh, yeah.
Because you do really want to try and achieve your goals, but also get your 5 villages out, which is the trigger for the end game, as quickly as possible. And so anytime you do an action which doesn't feel really efficient can really cost you because it you don't have so many turns, and so you really want to maximize. There's a lot of like, oh, do I play this to get this done? And I feel like the end sneaks upon me very quickly. That could be because you always trigger the end and you always win, but it always comes sooner than I expect, which is good.
Yeah, this is really a race game. So you got to be efficient and you got to be fast, and it's beautiful and it's super fun, and it's our number 3.
Our number 2 was actually Sean's number 1, but I managed to squeak in our number 1 in the one spot. So why don't you tell us about number 2?
All right, we'll jump out of order here because number 1 was Jess's number 1 because it was my number 3, I think. But this was my number 1 with a bullet. I love this game. It is Hegemony. And Hegemony is this... It's weird that I like it so much because it's so dry, the idea of it. It's a socio-economic political game where you have this giant board. It takes up 100% of the table, even at just 2 players. And you're playing as the working class, the middle class, the capitalists, or the state. And basically, you're just trying to help your class. You're trying to help your class succeed. You're trying to help them succeed financially. If you're the working class or the middle class, you're trying to build up your healthcare and your education. If you're the state, you're just trying your best to make everyone happy. If you're the capitalist, you're just trying to make a whole lot of stuff in a whole lot of stores and make a whole lot of money. And so you've got different goals, these asymmetric goals, but the game is kind of simple. Like, it's complex in... like when you look at the whole of it, but when you look at kind of a turn, you've just got 7 cards in your hand. Everyone has fairly similar cards, and you're just choosing one of those cards or one of your kind of 5 or 6 free action or main actions that you can do. And those cards are usually add voting cubes because there's a vote at the end of each day, or put out your workers in places, or whatever those might be, selling items to the store, whatnot. But how it's all interconnected is so smart, and they had people who actually are political scientists look at this to make sure that it like made actual sense. I feel like I'm learning as I play this game.
Yeah, it is really interesting how asymmetric it is. Your goals for the group that you're being are completely different, and it's very dynamic because you need to respond to the various situation, because there'll be times when you realize that if you're the working class and all of your workers are on the capitalist buildings, then you're benefiting them. So you might want to like strike or move them over to the state buildings. So it's not only thinking about how you can progress your people, but also are you actually kind of accidentally or just by happenstance benefiting the other members as well. And so this can be really long. At 2 players, you are limited to just being the working class and the capitalists. And we really wanted to try everybody. So we did try introducing 1 bot, then we tried introducing 2 bots. And
it was like 4 hours with 2 bots. And it took a lot of our brain, but it was still a cool puzzle. And what you were saying too about how you got to make sure you're not helping people too much, but you always are going to help people some. So everyone's kind of working together begrudgingly, much like in life. And so everything you do is going to help someone, and it's hopefully going to hurt someone else a little bit, but you just have to do it, and you have to hope you get a little bit more out of it. But it's so interesting and so tightly woven, and that it works as well as it does is amazing to me. But that is our number 2. It was my number 1, but averages, it is our number 2, and that is Hegemony.
Our number one, which was really my number one, is Dwarf Romantic, and this just blew my socks off. It seems really simple. You are cooperatively building out a town, and you got various goals that come up. So you need to connect your wheat fields and your forest, and you need to try and make a very long river and a long train track as you go. But there is just something very zen
Hmm.
about the experience. I just chills me right out. And I like the cooperation. We work well together, trying to decide, do we close off this forest to get the goal or pass it to keep it open in case we get another goal tile we can use for it. So it just hits everything I like. I love tile placement games. I love cooperative games. I love campaign games. And so I think for you, this probably would have been higher if we were talking about it the first time that we had finished the campaign.
Yeah, I think as we started our second campaign, I still love it, and everything you say is totally true. It's so chill, it's so zen, and it's fun to do. And we're doing the campaign slightly different this time, and it does feel a little different. And I can see us doing this campaign 3 or 4 times. Honestly, we're not gonna like rocket our way through it like we did the first time, but it's one that we're going to play regularly, especially if we're stressed and we just want a board game as a de-stressor.
Yeah.
This does that perfect.
Yeah, and this is one I'll always want to play. So Sean
Mhm.
just has to say he's up for it, and then we are bringing the box out, and that is why it is our number one.
And that is it. That brings us to the end of this. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the video is okay. I hope the sound is okay. Like I say, our camera is off at the camera doctors. Hopefully we'll have it back soon. But in the meanwhile, we've got this. And yeah, it's fun to talk about these games kind of halfway through the year, and then it'll be interesting to look at it and at the end of the year and see how many of these stayed on the list
Yeah.
when we do the big list over looking the whole year. I feel like at least the top three, I'm gonna say I think the top three are gonna be shoe-ins for the top 10 at the end of the year, but we'll see what comes at Essen.
Yeah, these 10 I felt were all really good.
Hmm.
So I am intrigued to what else comes out. But please do let us know in the comments what you've played from 2023 that you've really enjoyed, because I'm sure we've missed some
We've missed
great ones out
oodles.
there.
Yeah, there's ones I desperately want to play. There's a couple that we just haven't played in real life,
Yeah.
Eloa and Next Station Tokyo, that I think we're gonna love, but I don't like to talk about it too much till I've like held it in my hands and I know do all the bits work well. But those two for sure.
Yeah, we've played those like a dozen times at least on
Mhm.
BGA. But please, as usual, do like and subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.